Picture this. A teenage girl with big dreams, sitting at the kitchen table, waiting for her dad to say the words that could change her life. That was me, Sage Everly, at 16, heart pounding as I pitched my plan to study art abroad. I'd saved every penny, sketched until my fingers ached, and researched scholarships for months. But instead of pride, my dad, Victor Everly, delivered a gut punch I'll never forget. Sage, I'm funding your cousin Jace's college instead. He's got a real future ahead. Those words didn't just sting, they shattered me. In this first chapter of my story, I'll take you back to that betrayal. The moment my dad chose Jace over me, setting off a chain of events that would test my soul and lead to a karmic twist he never saw coming. It was a humid July evening, the kind where the air sticks to your skin. I'd rehearsed my pitch all week, laying out brochures and sketches, my voice trembling with hope. Dad sat across from me, arms crossed, his weathered face unreadable. Mom was in the background, chopping vegetables, pretending not to listen. "Art's a hobby, Sage, not a career," he said, cutting me off mid-sentence. "Jace needs this more. He's got a shot at engineering, a stable life. I'm putting my money there." My chest tightened. Jace, my golden boy cousin, raised by my dad's sister after her divorce, had always been the family's pride. Football star, straight-A student, the works. Me? I was the dreamer, the weird one, with paint-stained jeans. But I didn't expect Dad to pick him over his own daughter. I fought back tears, voice cracking. "Dad, I've got scholarships lined up. I just need a little help. This is my future too." He shook his head, resolute. "Money's tight, Sage. I can't split it. Jace is the priority." Mom dropped her knife, the clang echoing, but she didn't say a word. Silence was her specialty. I stared at him, the man who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd promised to always have my back, and saw a stranger. "So that's it? Jace gets everything, and I get nothing?" He didn't flinch. "You'll figure it out. You're tough." Tough. I was 16, heartbroken, and watching my dreams slip away because he'd rather bet on someone else. That night, I locked myself in my room, sketches scattered across the floor, and sobbed. Jace didn't even need the help. His mom had a decent job, and he'd already landed partial funding. But Dad saw him as the son he never had, the legacy he wanted. Me? I was collateral damage. I vowed then through the tears that I'd prove him wrong. I'd build my own future no matter how hard it got. Little did I know that betrayal was just the spark. Years later, karma would come knocking, and Dad would drown in regret as I rose from the ashes he left behind. This is where my journey starts, a tale of hurt, grit, and sweet revenge. Stick with me for the next part, where I fight to claw my way up while Dad doubles down on Jace. If this hits close to home, drop your thoughts below. Let's unpack this family mess together. After my dad, Victor Everly, crushed my dreams by choosing to fund my cousin Jace's future over mine, I, Sage Everly, was left to fend for myself. At 16, I watched my art school hopes fade, replaced by a burning resolve to prove I didn't need his help. In this second chapter, I'll take you through the gritty years that followed, the hustle, the heartbreak, and the slow unraveling of Dad's golden boy fantasy. While Jace sailed through college on Dad's dime, I clawed my way up from nothing, building a life he never expected. Karma was still a whisper then, but the cracks in his choice were starting to show. The months after that kitchen table betrayal were brutal. I couldn't afford art school abroad, so I enrolled in community college, juggling classes with 2 part-time jobs, waitressing at a greasy diner and stocking shelves at a craft store. Every paycheck went to tuition, supplies, or rent for the tiny room I moved into after graduating high school. Dad didn't offer a cent, just the occasional, "You're doing fine, Sage," over the phone. Mom sent me cookies sometimes, her quiet way of saying she felt bad, but she never challenged him. Meanwhile, Jace was living the dream at a top engineering school, posting pics of dorm parties and new gadgets, all thanks to Dad's investment. I'd scroll through his updates late at night, paint smudged on my hands, bitterness churning in my gut. He'd text me sometimes, oblivious, saying stuff like, "You should visit, Sage. College is awesome." I'd reply with a thumbs up, too tired to call him out. Jace wasn't the enemy. He didn't ask Dad to pick him. But seeing him thrive while I scraped by hurt like hell. My days blurred into a grind. Serve coffee, stock paintbrushes, study, sketch, sleep, repeat. My art became my lifeline. Late-night drawings of cityscapes and broken hearts, fueled by cheap ramen and spite. Dad, though, was smug. At family gatherings, he'd brag about Jace's grades, his internships, his bright future. "I made the right call," he'd say, clapping Jace on the back while I sat quietly, nursing a soda. Once, I snapped, "Glad someone's future matters," and he just chuckled. "Don't be dramatic, Sage. You're tough. You'll get there." Get there? I was 19, exhausted, and barely paying my bills while Jace got a free ride. Mom shot me a sympathetic look, but it didn't fix the sting. I stopped going to those dinners after that, pouring my energy into my work instead. Then came my first break. A local gallery saw my sketches online, rough but raw, and offered me a spot in a group show. I sold 3 pieces that night, enough to buy better supplies and quit the diner. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I texted Dad a pic of my sold art, hoping for a shred of pride. His reply? "Nice hobby, Sage. Jace just landed a summer job at a tech firm." My heart sank, but I didn't cry this time. I framed that text a reminder of who I was fighting for, me. Meanwhile, Jace's updates grew flashier, new car, fancy trips, all bankrolled by Dad's unwavering faith. But here's where the tide shifted, subtle at first. Jace started slipping, partying too hard, skipping classes. Dad didn't notice, too busy boasting. I heard it from a cousin. Jace bombed a semester, but Victor's still paying. I smirked, not out of joy but irony. My grind was paying off, slow and steady, while Dad's golden boy was cracking under the pressure he never had to earn. I kept hustling, landing freelance gigs, building a name in the art scene. My life was still a mess of late nights and cheap coffee, but it was my mess, built from scratch. That's where this chapter ends, with me rising and Jace teetering, Dad blind to it all. In the next part, his world starts to crumble as Jace's failures pile up, and my success forces him to look my way. If you've ever had to prove someone wrong the hard way, let me know below. This fight's just heating up, so stick around for more. By now, I, Sage Everly, had spent years clawing my way up from the wreckage of my dad Victor Everly's betrayal, choosing to fund my cousin Jace's future while leaving mine to rot. In this third chapter, the tables start turning in a way I never expected. While I hustled in the shadows, building my art career brick by brick, Jace's golden boy facade began to crumble under the weight of Dad's blind faith. Karma was warming up, and though I didn't see it coming yet, the cracks in Dad's perfect plan were about to widen into a chasm he couldn't ignore. This is the story of my quiet triumph and Jace's loud collapse. I was 22, living in a cramped studio apartment, when the whispers about Jace started trickling in. My grind had paid off. I'd gone from selling sketches at local galleries to landing commissions for small businesses, my name buzzing in the indie art scene. It wasn't glamorous. I still ate instant noodles more than I'd admit, but every sale, every client felt like a middle finger to Dad's hobby jab. Meanwhile, Jace was in his third year of college, the engineering prodigy Dad wouldn't shut up about. Except, the family grapevine told a different story. He's flunking out, my cousin Tara texted me one night. Parties too much, barely shows up to class. I didn't gloat, not yet. Jace had always been cocky but kind to me, and part of me felt bad. Still, I couldn't help the flicker of satisfaction. Dad had poured thousands into him. Tuition, rent, that shiny car I'd seen on Instagram. I'd gotten nothing but a "you're tough" pat on the back. Now Jace was blowing it, and Dad? Clueless. At Thanksgiving that year, I showed up for the first time in ages, tired of hiding. Jace wasn't there, busy with school, Dad said, beaming. He's interning at a top firm soon. Tara caught my eye and smirked. We both knew he'd failed his last semester. Dad's denial was almost comical. My life, though, was picking up speed. A mural I painted for a coffee shop went viral online, landing me a feature in a local magazine. Sage Everly, the self-made artist you need to know, the headline read. I framed it, hung it next to Dad's dismissive text from years back. Clients started calling. Restaurants, boutiques, even a startup wanting a logo. I quit the craft store job, focusing on art full-time. Money was tight, but it was mine, earned through sweat and stubbornness. I'd check Jace's socials sometimes, seeing fewer study posts, more blurry party pics. He was unraveling, and Dad's pride kept him blind. Then came the call that shifted everything. Mom, her voice shaky, said, "Sage, Jace got expelled. Too many failed classes, your dad's a mess." I froze, paintbrush mid-stroke. Expelled? After all that money, all that faith? He's yelling at Jace, saying he ruined everything, Mom added. I pictured Dad's red face, his bellowing voice, and felt a pang of guilt mixed with vindication. I'd warned him, in my own quiet way, that betting it all on Jace was a gamble. He hadn't listened. Now his golden boy was crashing, and I was the one still standing. I didn't reach out to Dad. Pride, maybe, or just exhaustion. But he called me a week later, voice gruff. "Sage, you see that magazine thing about you?" I nodded, forgetting he couldn't see me. "Yeah," a long pause. "Guess you're doing all right, huh?" It wasn't an apology, not even close, but it was the first time he'd acknowledged my work. "Yeah, Dad, I am," he grunted, then hung up. I sat there, stunned. Was he proud? Ashamed? I couldn't tell, but the call stuck with me, a tiny crack in his armor. Jace, meanwhile, moved back home, jobless, aimless, the car sold to cover debts. Family dinners turned tense, Dad's boasts replaced by silence. I kept building. More commissions, a solo gallery show booked for spring. People started recognizing my name, not as Victor's daughter, but as Sage Everly, artist. The contrast was stark, me rising, Jace sinking, and Dad stuck in the middle, his choice haunting him. Karma wasn't loud yet, but it was there, whispering in the shadows of his regret. That's where this chapter closes, with Jace down, me up, and Dad teetering on the edge of realization. In the next part, his regret hits full force as my success shines brighter, forcing a reckoning years in the making. If you've ever watched someone's gamble backfire, tell me below. This story's about to get real, so don't miss it. At this point in my journey, I, Sage Everly, had turned my dad Victor Everly's rejection into fuel, rising from a broke dreamer to an artist with a name people knew. Meanwhile, my cousin Jace, Dad's chosen one, had crashed and burned, expelled from college after squandering the future Dad bankrolled. In this fourth chapter, the pendulum swings hard. My success explodes into the spotlight, and Dad's regret finally breaks through his stubborn pride. Karma's no longer a whisper, it's a roar. And watching him drown in it while I soar is as bittersweet as it gets. This is the reckoning I didn't dare dream of. I was 24 when it all hit a tipping point. My solo gallery show, the one I'd booked months earlier, was a game changer. I'd poured everything into it. Late nights painting, scraping together cash for frames, promoting it on socials until my fingers cramped. The night arrived, a crisp March evening, and the gallery buzzed with strangers, friends, even a few local critics. My work, bold cityscapes and raw emotion on canvas, sold out by midnight. A reviewer called me a rising star with grit, and by morning my inbox was flooded with offers, commissions, interviews, a mural gig for a downtown hotel. I'd made it, not with Dad's help, but despite him. Word spread fast. A week later, I got a call from a national art blog wanting a feature. From Nothing to Now, Sage Everly's Unstoppable Rise, they titled it, digging into my story, the community college hustle, the diner days, the rejection that lit my fire. I didn't name Dad outright, but the subtext was clear. Social media lit up, my follower count doubling, then tripling. A gallery in New York reached out, offering representation. New York. I was dizzy with it, signing contracts, booking flights, all while Jace moped at home, jobless, a shadow of Dad's golden boy. Dad couldn't ignore it anymore. He showed up at my studio unannounced, a cluttered loft I'd rented with my earnings. I was mid-painting, music blasting when he knocked. He looked older, grayer, his usual swagger gone. "Sage," he said, voice rough, "this place, it's yours?" I nodded, wiping paint off my hands. "Yeah, Dad, all mine." He wandered in, eyeing the canvases, the article clippings pinned to the wall. "I saw that blog thing," he muttered. "You're big now, huh?" I shrugged. "Getting there." He picked up a sketch, one of my early ones, and his shoulders sagged. "I didn't think you'd—" I thought Jace was the safe bet." There it was, the closest he'd come to admitting he'd screwed up. I didn't let him off easy. "You picked him, Dad. You left me with nothing." He flinched, setting the sketch down. "I know, I see it now. Jace, he's lost. I poured everything into him, and he threw it away. You, though, you didn't need me." His voice cracked. "I'm proud, Sage, but I'm so damn sorry." Tears pricked my eyes, but I held them back. Proud? Sorry? After years of silence, it felt too late, yet it hit me square in the chest. "I needed you then," I said quietly. "Not now." He nodded, defeated. "I messed up, kid. I thought I was building something with Jace. Instead, I lost you." Lost me? He hadn't lost me, not entirely, but the gap between us was wide, carved by his choice. I didn't hug him, didn't absolve him. "I built this without you," I said, gesturing to the studio. "That's what matters." He left soon after, head low, and I stood there, torn between anger and a strange ache. His regret was real, drowning him, but it didn't erase the past. Family chatter shifted too. Mom called, gushing about my show, guilt lacing her words for staying quiet back then. Cousins texted, "You're killing it, Sage." Jace even messaged, "A week, congrats, you deserve it." Dad's regret rippled outward, his golden boy myth shattered. At a rare family dinner, he barely spoke, eyes darting to me as Aunt Lynn bragged about my latest mural. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. His gamble flopped, and I, the afterthought, was the one shining. This chapter ends with Dad facing the wreckage of his decision, me basking in hard-won glory and a fragile bridge between us. In the final part, I'll dive into how we navigate this new reality and whether forgiveness fits into my victory. If you've ever tasted sweet karma like this, spill it below. This story's wrapping up, so stay tuned for the end. Here we are at the end of my saga as Sage Everly. The girl my dad, Victor Everly, wrote off when he chose to fund my cousin Jace's future over mine. I built my own path from nothing, rising as an artist while Jace crashed and Dad drowned in regret. In this final chapter, my star burns bright. Dad grapples with the mess he made, and I decide what family means after all the dust settles. It's not a fairy tale ending, but a real one, raw and earned, with karma handing out lessons and me claiming my freedom. Let's close this out with heart and grit. I was 25, riding the high of my New York gallery deal, when life felt like mine for the first time. My studio hummed with projects, murals, commissions, a solo show booked for fall. The National Art Blog feature had blown up, landing me a TEDx talk invite titled Resilience in Color. I'd gone from diner shifts to speaking on stages, a self-made story that buzzed online. Dad's regret was palpable now. A shadow over every call, every visit. He'd show up with coffee, awkward and quiet, trying to bridge years of distance. "Sage, you're incredible," he'd say, eyes soft with something like awe. I'd nod, still guarded because words didn't erase the hurt. Jace, meanwhile, was picking up pieces. He'd enrolled in trade school, learning welding, a humbler path than Dad's engineering dream. At a family barbecue, he pulled me aside, beer in hand. "I screwed up, Sage. I didn't see what Dad's money cost you." His honesty surprised me. "You didn't ask him to choose," I said, "but it sucked watching you get it all." He nodded, sheepish. "I'm proud of you, though. You're the real deal." It wasn't a fix, but it eased something in me. Jace wasn't the villain. He'd just been handed a pedestal he couldn't hold. Dad's reckoning hit full force one rainy night. He called, voice thick. "Sage, can I come over?" I let him in wary. He sat on my couch, hands clasped and unloaded. "I failed you. I saw Jace as my shot at something big, and I was wrong. You were right there fighting, and I didn't see it. I'm so sorry, kid. Tears streaked his face, a rare sight. My throat tightened. I needed you, Dad, not your money, you. He nodded, broken. I know, I can't undo it, but I want to be here now, if you'll let me. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a plea, and it cracked my walls. I didn't forgive him that night. I couldn't, not fully. But I let him stay, talking about my art, my plans. He listened, really listened, for the first time in years. Over months, he kept showing up, at my shows, my talks, clapping louder than anyone. Mom joined him, her quiet guilt fading into pride. We missed so much, she admitted once, hugging me tight. The family shifted too, cousins joking about my famous status, Aunt Lynn admitting she'd envied my drive. Jace even gifted me a welded sculpture, rough but earnest, a peace offering. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Karma had done its work. Dad's regret was his burden, not mine, and Jace's fall humbled him. Me? I'd built a life bigger than their choices, a career that screamed, I was enough. Forgiveness crept in slow, not a free pass, but a choice. At my fall show, Dad stood front row, eyes wet, and I hugged him after, a quiet truce. You did this, Sage, he whispered. All you. I smiled, free at last. Yeah, I did. This story ends with me standing tall, family ties mending, and Dad learning late what I always knew. My worth wasn't his to define. I'm still painting, still rising, a future forged from my own fire. If this tale of betrayal, hustle, and redemption hit you, tell me below. Ever had to prove your worth the hard way? Share your journey, because this one's taught me resilience is the ultimate win. Thanks for writing this out with me. Catch you in the next story.